My wife looked at me one evening and said, "You need to accept that some dreams are not meant for people like you." She believed she was protecting me from disappointment, but she never realized that the person she thought had no future was quietly preparing for a moment that would change everything. My name is Ethan Walker, and for years, I learned that people often measure success by what they can see. They look at job titles, expensive offices, and visible achievements, then decide whether someone is winning or falling behind. By those standards, many people thought I was not going anywhere. Even my own wife, Claire, started to see me that way. Claire Walker was a successful executive at a technology company in Chicago. She was smart, ambitious, and respected by everyone around her. I was proud of the career she had built. I supported her through stressful deadlines, important presentations, and the long hours that came with her position. I never wanted to compete with her success. I wanted to be the person standing beside her, celebrating every achievement. But over time, we started seeing success differently. To Claire, success meant constant growth, a recognizable position, and achievements that other people could easily notice. My life looked different. I did not have a corner office or a company name on a building. I spent my days studying markets, researching businesses, and analyzing opportunities that most people never noticed. I preferred building quietly instead of announcing every step before the results appeared. Claire saw my choices differently. She saw someone who was taking too long to create something. She saw someone without a clear direction. What she did not see was the years of experience behind my decisions. She did not know about the companies I had advised privately or the opportunities one had studied carefully before making any move. I never hid my life because I wanted to deceive her. I simply believed that actions would always speak louder than promises. One night, we were sitting in our living room after dinner when the conversation changed. Claire had just returned from a major meeting at her company, and she was talking about the pressure her team was facing. I listened carefully, as I always did. Then she asked about my own plans. I told her I was continuing to work on several investment strategies and that I believed one opportunity could become something significant. She looked at me with concern. She told me she worried that I was spending too much time waiting for something that might never happen. She said that after all these years, she thought I should have something more stable to show for my efforts. Her words were not meant to hurt me, but they revealed something important. Claire did not see the work I had been doing. She only saw the results that had not appeared yet. I could have argued. I could have explained every decision I had made and every reason behind my choices. But I decided not to. I had learned that people rarely understand a vision before they see the outcome. So I simply told her I appreciated her honesty. Then I returned to my office and continued working. What Claire did not know was that my biggest opportunity was closer than she imagined. The years of preparation, research, and patience were about to create a situation neither of us expected. And soon, the same company she worked so hard to build would face a challenge that would make them look for someone with exactly the experience she believed I did not have. The morning after my conversation with Claire, I returned to my usual routine. I made coffee, reviewed market reports, and spent several hours studying business trends before most people even started their workday. To someone watching from the outside, my life probably looked simple. There were no large meetings, no public announcements, and no obvious signs of success. But behind that quiet routine was years of experience, careful decisions, and preparation. I had learned early in my career that the loudest person in the room was not always the person creating the most value. Sometimes the most important work happened quietly, long before anyone noticed the results. My office was not impressive by traditional standards. It was a comfortable room in our home with a large desk, a computer, several notebooks, and shelves filled with business books. But to me, it represented something important. It was the place where I analyzed opportunities, learned from past decisions, and prepared for the future. Every report I reviewed and every conversation I had with business owners helped me understand how companies grew, adapted, and survived challenges. Claire knew I spent time working, but she did not know the depth of what I was building. She saw my office as a place where I spent too much time thinking about ideas that might never happen. She did not realize that many successful opportunities begin as ideas that only a few people believe in at first. Over the years, I had learned not to measure progress only by immediate results. Some investments required patience. Some strategies needed time before they showed their true potential. That mindset was something I carried into every decision. I was not interested in chasing quick recognition. I wanted to create something that could last. Meanwhile, Claire continued building her career at Horizon Technologies, one of the fastest-growing companies in the region. She was respected by her colleagues and trusted by her leadership team. I admired her dedication, but I also noticed how much pressure she carried. Every week brought new challenges, changing expectations, and difficult decisions. She was constantly trying to prove that she belonged among the top leaders in her industry. Sometimes I wondered if that pressure was part of the reason she had started judging success differently. In her world, results needed to be visible. Progress needed to be measurable. Achievements needed to be recognized. My approach was the opposite. I believed that strong foundations were built before anyone saw the finished structure. A few weeks after our conversation, I noticed Claire becoming more stressed about work. She received more calls after hours and spent more time reviewing company reports. I asked if everything was okay, and she told me the company was entering an important period. They were preparing for a major expansion, but there were concerns about the direction they were taking. I listened carefully, but I did not offer my opinion unless she asked. I knew that sometimes people do not need immediate answers. They need someone willing to understand. What Claire did not know was that I had been following the same industry trends affecting her company. I had noticed changes in the market and had been studying how businesses were adapting. I had ideas about what could help, but I kept them to myself. Not because I wanted her company to struggle, and not because I wanted to prove a point. I simply knew that advice only mattered when someone was ready to hear it. A few days later, I received an unexpected message from someone I had worked with years earlier. The message was short, but it caught my attention. Someone at Horizon Technologies wanted to discuss a business opportunity with me. I looked at the screen for a moment and realized that the situation was beginning to change. The company Claire dedicated so much of her life to was about to enter a difficult chapter, and the person they were reaching out to was the same person Claire believed was still waiting for his chance. The message I received that morning was from Robert Mitchell, the Chief Executive Officer of Horizon Technologies. I had known Robert for several years through business circles, and we had spoken occasionally about market changes and long-term strategies. His message was professional and direct. He wanted to schedule a conversation about a challenge the company was facing. I knew that Horizon Technologies was growing quickly, but I also knew that fast growth often created complicated decisions. Companies could succeed for years and still find themselves at a crossroads when the market changed. When I arrived at the meeting, I noticed something immediately. The atmosphere inside the company was different from the confident image people saw from the outside. Employees were focused, but there was a sense of uncertainty in the building. Teams were working hard, yet leadership was searching for answers. Robert welcomed me into the conference room and introduced me to several members of the executive team. Claire was not there at first, which surprised me. I later learned that she was finishing another meeting and would join shortly. Robert explained that Horizon Technologies had reached an important stage. The company had expanded quickly, but some recent decisions had created challenges. They needed someone who could look at the situation from a different perspective, someone who was not influenced by internal habits or company politics. He asked for my thoughts on their current strategy. I listened carefully before responding. I did not want to pretend I had all the answers. Good decisions begin with understanding the full picture. I reviewed their reports, asked questions about their goals, and studied the information they provided. As I looked through the details, I noticed several patterns that reminded me of problems I had seen before. The company did not lack talented people. They did not lack ambition. What they needed was a clearer direction and a strategy that balanced short-term pressure with long-term stability. Before I shared my recommendations, the conference room door opened. Claire walked in and stopped when she saw me sitting at the table. Her expression changed from surprise to confusion. She looked at Robert, then back at me. She clearly did not understand why I was there. Robert smiled and explained that he had invited me because he valued my experience and believed my perspective could help the company move forward. Claire remained quiet for a moment. I could tell she was trying to understand a situation that did not fit the image she had created in her mind. The husband she thought was struggling financially was now sitting in a corporate meeting discussing the future of the company where she worked. But I did not feel the need to prove anything. I was not there to make Claire regret what she had said. I was there because a business needed help, and I believed I could provide it. During the meeting, I shared my thoughts carefully. I explained where I saw opportunities, where I believed improvements could be made, and how the company could prepare for future changes. The executives listened closely. Robert asked thoughtful questions and took notes throughout the conversation. Claire watched quietly from across the table. For the first time, she was seeing a side of me she had never taken the time to understand. She was not seeing a man waiting for success. She was seeing someone who had been preparing for years. By the end of the meeting, Robert thanked me for my honesty and insight. He told the team that sometimes the best solutions come from people who are willing to look beyond appearances. Claire walked beside me after the meeting ended, but she did not say much. I could tell she had many questions. She was beginning to realize that the story she believed about my life was missing important chapters, and this was only the beginning of what she was about to discover. After the meeting with Robert Mitchell and the leadership team ended, I expected Claire to ask many questions. Instead, she remained quiet as we walked through the office hallway together. The silence between us felt different from the silence we had experienced at home. Before, it was filled with misunderstanding. Now, it was filled with thoughts neither of us had fully expressed yet. When we reached the parking area, Claire finally looked at me and asked how long I had known Robert. I told her that we had crossed paths through business discussions over the years. She seemed surprised that I had connections and experience she never knew about. She asked why I had never told her more about my work. It was a fair question, and I understood why she asked it. The truth was simple. I never wanted my value in our relationship to depend on what I could provide financially or professionally. I wanted Claire to believe in me because of who I was, not because of a title, an investment account, or a business achievement. But I also realized that by keeping everything private, I had created a distance between us. I had protected my goals, but I had not always shared my journey. Over the next few days, I continued helping Horizon Technologies review their situation. Robert and his team provided additional information, and I spent hours studying their plans, market conditions, and future challenges. The more I learned, the more I understood why they needed a different perspective. The company had talented employees and strong ideas, but they were facing decisions that required patience and long-term thinking. During one of our discussions, Robert told me that many businesses fail because they focus only on immediate results. He believed that companies needed leaders who could recognize opportunities before they became obvious. I understood that completely because my entire career had been built around that idea. Meanwhile, Claire started paying closer attention to the work I was doing. She saw that my approach was not random or uncertain. There was a process behind every decision. There was research behind every recommendation. She began asking questions, not as a critic, but as someone who genuinely wanted to understand. One evening, while we were having dinner at home, Claire admitted something that stayed with me. She said she had spent years assuming that because my path looked different from hers, it meant I was falling behind. She realized she had compared my journey to her own instead of trying to understand it. I appreciated her honesty, but I also told her something important. I said that success was never supposed to look identical for everyone. Some people build careers in front of an audience. Others build quietly until the right moment arrives. A week later, Robert invited me back for another meeting. This time, the conversation was more serious. The company needed to make a major strategic decision, and my recommendations could influence the direction they chose. Claire was included in the meeting, and I noticed something different in the way she looked at me. There was no longer doubt or disappointment. There was curiosity and respect. She was beginning to see that the person she thought was waiting for success had actually been preparing for it all along. But the most important moment was not happening inside the conference room. It was happening between two people who were finally learning to see each other clearly. The next few days changed the way Claire saw everything around her. For years, she had believed that success was something easy to recognize. She thought it came with a certain position, a visible career path, and achievements that other people could immediately notice. But watching me work with Horizon Technologies forced her to question that belief. She started seeing the difference between appearing successful and actually creating value. During the following meetings with Robert Mitchell and his team, I continued reviewing the company's challenges carefully. I did not approach the situation as someone trying to prove a point. I approached it as someone who wanted to understand the problem and find the best possible solution. The company had grown quickly, but growth had created new challenges. Their teams were talented, their products had potential, and their leadership had ambition. What they needed was a clearer strategy that could support their future goals. I spent long hours reviewing reports, analyzing market information, and studying the decisions that had brought them to that moment. Every detail mattered. I believed that strong decisions were rarely based on one piece of information. They came from understanding the entire picture. Robert appreciated that approach. He told me that many advisors focused on telling companies what they wanted to hear, but he valued people who were willing to look deeper and identify what truly needed to change. His words reminded me why I had always preferred working quietly. I was never interested in attention. I was interested in results. Claire watched this process closely. She saw how executives listened when I spoke. She saw how carefully I considered every recommendation before sharing it. Most importantly, she saw that my confidence did not come from trying to impress anyone. It came from years of preparation and experience. One evening after another long day of meetings, Claire and I sat together at home. For the first time in a long time, our conversation was not about proving who was right. She asked me about my past work and the experiences that shaped the way I thought about business. I shared stories I had never fully explained before. I told her about opportunities one had studied, companies I had helped evaluate, and lessons I had learned from watching businesses succeed and struggle. Claire listened carefully. She admitted that she had mistaken my quiet nature for a lack of ambition. She had assumed that because I did not talk about every achievement, there were no achievements to talk about. Hearing that was meaningful, because I knew she was not just talking about business. She was talking about how she had viewed me for years. I told her that I never needed her to believe I was perfect. I only wanted her to understand that my journey was different, not unsuccessful. The next morning, Robert scheduled a critical strategy meeting with the executive team. The company needed to make a decision that could shape its future direction. This time, Claire entered the conference room differently. She was no longer wondering why I was there. She understood why Robert valued my perspective. As the discussion began, I noticed something that mattered more than any business decision. Claire was no longer sitting across from me as someone who doubted my ability. She was sitting beside me as someone who finally understood it. And that realization marked the beginning of a completely different chapter for both of us. The strategy meeting at Horizon Technologies became one of the most important moments in the company's recent history. Everyone in the room understood that the decisions made that day could influence the future direction of the business. Robert Mitchell gathered the leadership team around the conference table, and the atmosphere was focused and professional. There was no panic, only the understanding that the company needed a clear plan. I reviewed the information one final time before sharing my recommendations. My goal was never to replace the people who had built the company or suggest that they had failed. Every successful organization faces moments when old strategies need to evolve. The important thing is recognizing those moments early enough to make the right changes. I explained that Horizon Technologies had strong foundations, but they needed to adjust their approach to changing market conditions. I suggested focusing on sustainable growth, improving internal communication, and making decisions based on long-term value instead of short-term pressure. The executives asked detailed questions, and I appreciated that they were willing to examine every possibility. Robert listened carefully and encouraged an open discussion. What impressed me most was that everyone in the room was focused on finding the best solution rather than protecting personal opinions. Claire watched the conversation quietly. She noticed something she had never fully understood before. My confidence was not based on wanting to appear important. It came from years of studying, learning, and preparing for situations exactly like this one. After the meeting ended, Robert thanked me for my contribution. He told me that the company needed someone who could see beyond immediate challenges and recognize opportunities that were not obvious at first glance. He explained that experience was not always measured by a title or a public position. Sometimes it came from years of observing, analyzing, and understanding how different decisions created different outcomes. On the way home, Claire and I talked about everything that had happened. She was quieter than usual, but it was not because she was uncomfortable. It was because she was thinking deeply. She admitted that she had spent years believing I was not ambitious enough because I did not follow the same path as her. She had compared my journey to hers and assumed that a different direction meant a lack of success. I told her that I understood why she thought that way. We all use our own experiences to judge the world around us. But I also explained that people can miss incredible things when they only look for success in familiar places. Claire told me that seeing me in those meetings changed the way she viewed me. She realized that the person she thought needed to find his purpose had already found it. He had simply chosen a quieter path. That conversation meant more to me than any business recognition because it represented something personal. For years, I had wanted Claire to understand that I was not lost. I was building something in my own way. In the following weeks, Horizon Technologies began implementing several of the strategic changes we discussed. The company started moving with more clarity, and the leadership team became more confident about the future. But the biggest change was not happening inside the company. It was happening at home. Claire no longer saw my work as a question mark. She saw the years of effort behind it. She finally understood that success does not always arrive with noise or attention. Sometimes it grows quietly until the right moment reveals everything. As Horizon Technologies moved forward with its new strategy, I noticed something important happening around me. The company was not just changing its business direction. It was changing the way people viewed the importance of patience, experience, and thoughtful decision-making. For years, many people believed that the fastest path was always the best path. But the changes at Horizon proved that long-term success often required a different approach. Robert Mitchell continued working closely with the leadership team, and I remained involved in helping them evaluate their progress. Every decision was carefully reviewed, and every adjustment was made with the company's future in mind. I appreciated that Robert never looked for simple answers. He understood that strong businesses were built through consistent effort, teamwork, and the willingness to learn from challenges. Claire also became more involved in understanding my work. Before this experience, she had only seen the results of my choices from the outside. Now she was seeing the process behind them. She saw the research, the preparation, and the careful thinking that happened before any decision was made. One evening, Claire asked me why I had never tried to build a more visible career. She wondered why I had chosen to work quietly when I had the ability to take a more public role. I told her that everyone has a different definition of success. Some people enjoy recognition and leadership positions where everyone knows their name. Others prefer creating value behind the scenes. Neither choice is better. They are simply different. I explained that I never wanted to spend my life proving myself to people who were only looking at the surface. I wanted to build something meaningful and create results that could stand on their own. Claire listened carefully and told me that she finally understood something she had missed for years. She thought I was avoiding ambition because I was afraid of failure. She now realized that I was simply following a different strategy. That conversation brought us closer because it was not about business anymore. It was about understanding each other. At Horizon Technologies, the results of the new strategy began becoming clearer. The company improved its planning process, strengthened communication between teams, and created a more stable approach for future growth. Robert later told me that one of the most valuable changes was not a single recommendation I made. It was the mindset behind every decision. He said that companies needed people who could look beyond immediate pressure and think about what would matter years later. Hearing that reminded me of why I had chosen my path. I had never wanted to be the person everyone noticed in the beginning. I wanted to be the person people trusted when the important moment arrived. Meanwhile, my relationship with Claire continued changing. She no longer questioned whether I had a direction. Instead, she became curious about my ideas and started sharing her own challenges with me more openly. We were no longer two people trying to convince each other who was right. We were becoming partners who respected each other's strengths. Looking back, I realized that the biggest change was not that others finally recognized my abilities. The biggest change was that Claire and I finally understood each other better. The success at Horizon mattered, but the trust we rebuilt mattered even more. And that was something no title, position, or financial achievement could ever replace. Several months after Horizon Technologies began implementing the new strategy, the company entered a period of steady improvement. The changes were not about creating overnight success or making dramatic announcements. They were about building stronger foundations, improving decisions, and creating a clearer direction for the future. Robert Mitchell often reminded the leadership team that meaningful progress came from consistent actions, not temporary excitement. I appreciated that approach because it reflected the same principles I had followed throughout my career. During this time, Claire continued to experience her own transformation. The woman who once believed success could only be measured by visible achievements started seeing the value in patience and preparation. She began asking for my thoughts before making important decisions, not because she needed someone to solve every problem, but because she respected the way I approached challenges. Our conversations became different. We talked less about who was right and more about how we could learn from each other. One weekend morning, Claire and I sat together over coffee and talked about everything that had changed. She admitted that the hardest part for her was accepting that she had misunderstood me for so long. She said she had been so focused on her own definition of success that she never considered there might be another way to build a meaningful life. I told her that I also had something to learn. I had spent years protecting my goals and keeping my plans private because I wanted to let results speak for themselves. But I realized that sharing your journey with the people you love is important too. Success is not only about what you build. It is also about who you allow to walk beside you while you build it. Claire smiled and said that was the first time she understood why I had always remained calm when others questioned my choices. I was not waiting for approval. I already believed in the work I was doing. At Horizon Technologies, Robert continued recognizing the importance of having different perspectives within the company. He later invited me to participate in additional discussions about future opportunities. I agreed, but I made one thing clear. My goal was never to control the company or receive recognition. I wanted to contribute ideas that help people make better decisions. Robert respected that mindset because he believed the best partnerships were built on trust and shared goals. As time passed, Claire's colleagues also began noticing the positive changes in the company. They saw that thoughtful planning and careful strategy created stronger results than rushing into decisions. Claire was proud of what her team accomplished, but she was also proud of something more personal. She finally understood the person she had spent years beside. She understood that the quiet man she once worried about was never lost. He was simply building in a different way. Looking back, I realized that the greatest lesson was not about business or financial success. It was about perspective. People often judge others based on what they can see at a specific moment, without knowing the effort, experience, and preparation happening behind the scenes. My journey with Claire taught us both that understanding someone takes more than looking at the surface. It requires patience, honesty, and the willingness to see things from another person's point of view. And after everything we experienced, we were no longer two people trying to measure each other's success. We were two people who finally understood that success means much more when it is shared with someone who truly sees you. A year after everything changed, I often found myself thinking about how different life looked compared to the moment when Claire first questioned my direction. At that time, she believed I was standing still while everyone else was moving forward. She believed success had a specific appearance, and because my journey did not match that image, she assumed I was falling behind. But time revealed something important. Growth does not always happen where people can see it. Sometimes the most meaningful progress happens quietly, through years of learning, patience, and preparation. Horizon Technologies continued to grow with the new strategy in place. Robert Mitchell and his leadership team built stronger systems, made more thoughtful decisions, and created a culture where experience and different perspectives were valued. I remained involved when they needed my input, but I was never interested in becoming the person everyone talked about. I simply wanted to help create something that could last. Robert once told me that the greatest contribution I made was not a single recommendation. It was showing the company the importance of thinking beyond immediate challenges. That lesson stayed with me because it reflected how I had lived my entire life. I believe that the strongest results came from people who were willing to prepare before the opportunity arrived. Claire also continued changing in ways that mattered. She became more open, more patient, and more willing to understand perspectives different from her own. She no longer measured people only by their current position or visible achievements. She started looking deeper and asking questions before making assumptions. Our relationship became stronger because we were no longer trying to prove our own definitions of success. We were learning from each other. One evening, Claire and I revisited the conversation we had years earlier in our living room. The conversation where she told me she worried I would never achieve the things I wanted. She smiled and admitted that she never expected that moment would become one of the most important lessons of our lives. I told her that I never wanted her to feel guilty for having a different perspective. Everyone sees the world through their own experiences. What matters is whether we are willing to grow when we discover something new. She told me that the person she underestimated became the person who taught her the most about patience and belief. Hearing that meant more to me than any business achievement because it showed that our journey had created something more valuable than recognition. It created understanding. Looking back, I realized that success was never about proving someone else wrong. It was about staying committed to your own path, even when others do not understand it yet. It was about continuing to learn, continuing to improve, and trusting that meaningful work would eventually create meaningful results. The greatest changes in my life did not come from the moment people recognized what I could do. They came from the moments when I continued moving forward even when nobody was watching. Claire and I learned that people are often more complex than the stories others create about them. A person who appears unsuccessful may be preparing for something extraordinary. A person who seems ordinary may have years of experience waiting for the right moment to be discovered. Today, when I think about everything that happened, I do not remember the doubts or the misunderstandings. I remember the growth, the lessons, and the people who were willing to see beyond appearances. Because in the end, the greatest achievement was not that others finally recognized my value. The greatest achievement was building a life where the people closest to me understood it too.